Ella Ivy here with Astrology. I'm here on day 9 of our 30-day cosmic conversation on astrology matters, things that are affecting us cosmologically, and how we're seeing it land for us real time as in humanity as we are all consciously creating our reality. And we're into this new flux of energy, if you will, that we've never been before in humanity, especially with this conjunction with Neptune and Saturn and Aries, right? The last time this happened was the 1700s. So no human alive that we know of has seen this time of energy, this portal of energy. And as I've been following the media and listening to how other people's are speaking, what people are speaking about, what the focus is, at least in my little reality timeline, right? My little algorithm of consciousness that I'm drawn to. And I've set up my algorithm on all the different social medias only to align with things that matter to me, right? So I'm not very political. So if you guys are political, this may not be for you. This tends to lean towards more of a spiritual bent, but it also leads to human consciousness, right? How can we be the best version of ourselves using the tool of astrology? Because this is the periphery that I come from with Live as an Astrology, that all is self. And so again, if you come from that periphery, or you were really practicing unity consciousness in a deeper way within yourself so that you can tune into those aspects within yourself, so again, to have a better experience of this human reality, this human timeline that we're all in right now, because we're starting to realize it's never what we think and it's never what we've been taught, and that there's things coming to light that have been shed, uh, that a light is being focused on, especially in this Gemini season, as we're starting to look at the language, we're looking at the dialogue, we're looking at commerce, which these are all things ruled by Gemini. And I'm so grateful that I'm actually slowing down my language, because I was noticing, going back and doing some editing on these videos, I'm like, man, I'm talking really fast. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Mercury went into Gemini season. And so there's a lot to talk about, right? And I'm getting activated with other content creators, and I'm getting exposed to and introduced to new types of content creators who are speaking their truth, who are speaking on the things that maybe you were just having in private conversations with yourself or your own little community that nobody wanted to talk about because you didn't want to be ridiculed, or you didn't want to be seen as like the black sheep, right? Ostracized. And for me, just transparency, it has not been an easy path for me back in since 2018, guys. And this is when Uranus went into Taurus in my house. And for all of us, right? Because it lasts for 7 years. And so when this Uranus ingressed into Taurus, it completely upheavaled my world, right? This is also the year that my son graduated high school. So I went through this empty nest phase where for the longest time, my purpose was to be a mother, and how I provided it was a single mom. And still I'm a single mom. But for the longest time, I provided from, God, there's hair. Why am I this little piece of, that's annoying. Come on, let's get out of there. Thank you. For the longest time, again, I had been in hospitality as a way to pay the bills, and I'd always had 2 or 3 jobs. As a single parent, it just has to be a mom, but if you're a single father out there, you guys can to relate that, when you're raising your kids on your own, it can be challenging, and there's a lot of work involved. And while it was challenging, I had a lot of blessings along the way. I ended up being able to work at a beautiful place on Clearwater Beach, where I worked days mostly. So I was mostly home at night with my son. And I had a lot of support with the YMCA, the local community there, that would pick my son up and take him to the YMCA while I was working my day shift at this hospitality bar. And then I'd come home and get to be with him. So I had a lot of great experiences. Honestly, there was a lot of blessings in my life. It was not always hard. I'm not going to lie. There was some great things that transpired from that. And I loved my job, right? I loved working with people. I loved being in hospitality. I had a good time. It was my outlet. And so there was a lot to it. But towards the end, when Uranus came into Taurus, there was like this closure energy. Uranus is like, look, you're going to have unexpected things happen in your life. Taurus is the ground in your body. You're going to experience, Taurus also is, our finances, our values. my values were changing. I was starting to expand into my spiritual nature. I was going, just really deep diving into, I knew that the life that I was living in wasn't sustainable. And again, my son had graduated high school and he was getting ready to traverse off into his own, exploration. And so I was really at that time like, oh my gosh, what's my purpose now? I know that, hospitality, if you guys have worked in hospitality, especially as you get older, it's a shelf life. You can't do it forever. The longer you're in it, the harder it is on your body, Taurus, and to do the physical things that commanded the energy of being in hospitality. And so I was like, well, what's my purpose now? Other than being a mom and a server or a bartender, and this is how I know how to make money, right? Bartending and being hospitality, I know how to do that. That's familiar to me. I'm good at that. I actually won bartender of the year at one of the jobs I worked at because again, I could hear my dad in the background. If you're going to do something, be the best at it, right? So that was my driver to that competitive nature that I had, and to some extent still have, right? I'm competing to be the best version of myself. I've just turned it into an inward exploration. But why is this relevant? Why am I talking about this and going into this? Because in this since 2018, I've been navigating my spiritual life, right? Stepping into being an astrologer, um, being a facilitator, getting into wellness. And so that required like physician heal thyself, right? So that required a lot of inner work, a lot of inner healing. If you want to hold space for somebody, first of all, you got to hold space for yourself. And then once you gather those healing codes within yourself, then you can hold space for the other that are also possibly going through those same dynamics that you just went through, right? So you can hold that space. You're like, oh, I've acquired that architecture of healing within me, and now all I have to do is just be there, right? Just be your authentic self and hold that. So this is because I never really resonated, even though I became a Reiki master, and I did it really under beautiful circumstances. I didn't pay a lot of money, not for anything that people pay, not for, I'm not dissing Reiki masters, right? I love you. I love everybody because I was one. But then you get to a point where you even transcend that, right? Like you don't even want to use those old symbols because that activates the symbols of healing within yourself where you don't need it anymore. It's almost like you use a tool until your house is built and then you don't need those tools anymore, right? Your house is built, you don't need them, but you don't want to throw away the tools that got your house built. And so Reiki is a tool and it's a beautiful tool, but I feel like when I first got my Reiki certification back in 2007, it was from a divine practitioner who he also had a higher integrity and said, "Listen, I'm going to offer for you to get your level 1, 2, and 3 for only $7, but I'm asking you to sign a contract that you go out and you actually, um, you know, you make 5 other Reiki masters at least." Right? That you attune them so that they can turn on their own Reiki healing codes. And so I really like that, right? Because now sometimes the Reiki classes, they're charging hundreds of dollars, right, for this tool that we all have access to real time right now within our noses, right? Because we've evolved past needing these exterior um, sort of frequencies outside of us. If it's a tool that helps ignite the frequencies and the healing remembrances within you, I would say continue with that. And again, I don't want to throw away the tool that helped us get here, but I'm also saying there's an opportunity to transcend that. And so there's been a lot of people that have capitalized on healing modalities and people charging hundreds of dollars to get these Reiki certifications that the guys I only paid $7 for, and because the being that I got it from was very heart centered, and he really just wanted, Dr. Jim was his name. He was in the Florida area and in the Palm Harbor area. Maybe if you guys are from there, you can put in the comments if you remember Dr. Jim. He was incredible. That was the first class I took where it was total telepathy. Like he was talking to me telepathically on one of the classes I was taking with him. And I remember where he's like, close your eyes and just sit for a minute. And everything got really quiet, right? And I remember sitting there, I'm like, okay. And nothing was said. He was just sending codes out for whoever would receive it, right? Telepathically. He was starting to play with telepathy. This is all back in 2007. And I remember sitting there, my eyes closed, right? Because I was just kind of a novice back then. learning these things. I remember sitting there, my eyes closed, all of a sudden I can hear his thoughts and he's like instructing the class. And I remember like opening my eyes, like, is anybody else hearing this? Or am I the only one? Everybody seemed like quiet in their own world. And I'm like having this whole conversation telepathically with this teacher, Dr. Jim. So that's when I knew there was something to this meditative healing, energy work thing. And man, like I said, I was still in hospitality, going to these energy healing workshops and learning to be a Reiki master and then being exposed to learning astrology. So I almost felt like I was in these dual worlds, right? Because in hospitality, it's all about, sex, drugs, rock and roll, partying, I partied hard. That was also a mantra I heard from my dad. I was highly influenced by my dad. I love you. But he was very influential in my life, and I could always remember him too saying, if you work hard, you got to, work hard, play hard, do everything hard, and he was definitely a party animal and had his whole, he is an incredible being. But there was also consequences to that, right? Because he also, every action in life will create a reaction and will a causal experience, right? So unfortunately, my dad, because of his years of partying hard and playing hard, his body deteriorated and he went through a lot of um, health challenges towards the end of his days. And he was in suffering for a lot of years. So, but again, he told me too in consciousness when I talked to my dad, because again, he's since transitioned, he's like, I was there to learn suffering. I was there to learn the frequency of suffering because he was showing me the energy of my father's not destroyed, just transformed. He's the next version, octave of higher version of himself. So he's been guiding me, helping me stand in my power, helping me do these videos, right? Even though he didn't understand me when he was alive, I talked to him about spirituality and he kind of looked at me like I was going to say a third eye, which, now he laughs. It's like, yeah, you always kind of had this knowing, but I couldn't see you because I had my own thoughts and my own projections and my own dialogue. I couldn't truly see your essence and your heart. But now that I've transitioned, he's like, I can see you now. And gosh, I want to help you. Right. So again, this is more of a free flow conversation, Gemini season. But how is this relevant? Because what this back in again, 2018, when I was getting off the hospitality thing, and that's a whole other story about how I got actually suspended from a job I was working at because I said I'd vote for Oprah. Somebody overheard me talking about that and then they suspended me because I offended somebody and so they let me off work for a week and that's when I got released. So that's when I realized I was like, oh shit, I can't go back to working in hospitality. It's ridiculous. Wait, you're gonna put me on suspension for a week because I said I'd vote for Oprah? Now I know what I know about Oprah and all that shit going on. I'm like, oh my gosh. I really was idling because I loved Oprah. I used to love, Super Soul Sunday and all her dialogue, right? I fell right into that too. Again, these spiritual leaders, right? That we put on these pedestals, and man, the higher you put them up, the harder it is when they fall. And then you start going through this whole dialogue within yourself. Well, like, frick, who can I trust? And I feel like this has been a lesson for me my whole life because this is also why I got off the religious thing. I think I guys have told you this. I've been baptized in 4 different religions, right? Because every religion that I went to, they say, hey, man, if love and light, but if you don't adopt our love and light language, you're gonna go to hell. So you might want to get dunked in our water so that your soul, will go to the good place, and we'll say. Which I love that show, by the way, because if you've ever watched that show, The Good Place, it will show you what was really going on, right? Anyway, I digress. So coming back to being, baptized 4 different religions, because they all told me if I wasn't, I'd go to hell. And then this, the last I was in a particular religion, I won't name it, because I honor all religion and wherever you are. This is not disrespecting. This is my own story. This is my own experience with it. So I was into it, man. I was going to church every Sunday night, Wednesday nights. I was in the youth group. I was going to retreats. I was in it. I was in it to win it because it was my community, right? And there was definitely beautiful experience there. I had a tumultuous childhood growing up, and actually some of the deans of the church took me in when I got kicked out of my house when my mom and I were really going through some issues. So again, there was some great people in these organizations, and I'm not dogging everything. But there are shadows, right? Especially in the spiritual community, whether you're following religion or spirituality or anything that has to do with your spirit, right? The spiritual matters of humanity. And so it's not all love and light. It isn't. And when I had left the church in Texas and I had moved to Florida to go to college to USF back in 1991, that's when I graduated high school. I had discovered that the pastor of the church, once I left, it was a year later after I had left, so I was in USF at the time, and I had discovered that he had, left the church. He had taken all the church's money, and then he had left with one of the choir members' wives and took off and then ended up getting into real estate, right? And this is the guy that saved me and that baptized me. And so I was like thrown for a loop. I said, wait a minute, I can't, what? This being, he was so kind and it was so sweet and I really felt like he had a heart for God. And then hearing the story about what happened after I left, it threw me into a tailspin. It really forced me to face like, oh my gosh, I found God through this being. What God did I find? Was this even real? Did everything he taught me about Christ and Christ consciousness and everything we should believe to be true? Again, I was in it to win it. I was going to church, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I was in it. And it shattered this. I have to go back and see where Uranus was during that time. I'll probably go do that after this video. It was another aha awakening moment for me to go, wait a minute, don't put all your eggs in one basket as to what you think you know about spirituality and who you're worshiping. I hear worship, right? WAR, the worship. And so at that time, when I was going into my second semester at USF, I was in my exploration about like who I wanted to be and what I wanted to major in. I was introduced to a world religions class, and so now mind you, I was raised in Texas initially, and then I moved to Florida. So I just thought that there was one God, right? That's how I was taught, that this is the God. It may show up in different ways, but there's still one monotheistic God that may show up for the Baptist or the Catholic, but it's still one, right? Um, but then when I got introduced to world religions, I was like, wait a minute. There are other religions and other people thinking in different. Wait, there's more than one God that people are worshiping in different parts of the world. And so again, there was this crumbling of what had happened with the minister of this church, and then there was the awakening of me going to school. Again, this is all Sagittarius, higher octave, higher education, and I was being exposed to a whole nother way of seeing the world and how different people in different cultures and different religions speaking different languages had different belief systems and actually prayed to different gods. And as a little Texas girl, I was like, what? It just blew me away. So anyway, again, religion, spirituality, connecting to the divine has always been sacred and a part of my soul's journey. I know it has been. I've got North Node in Sagittarius, 29 degrees. First house. I got to step into these things and become them, right? I got to go into there, plunge me, like I've been through Native American moon ritual ceremonies. I've gone to Greece and I've studied with the Essenes and just, gone to their temples and having remembrances. I've had past life regressions. I put Sananga in my eyes because he's burning cayenne peppers because I wanted to have clear vision when I sleep, right? 5-MeO DMT. I mean, you name it, I've done it. I haven't gone to Costa Rica and do ayahuasca yet because I'm not drawn to, and I don't even think I am going to because I may not need it. It depends on where I'm at. And I'm not willing to say what I'm going to do or not do. I'm going to stay very present with the energy and trying to stay now. So going back to 2018, this is a long story. But so I was stepping into more of a spiritual community, right? And I was starting to see there was a lingo being spoken on, and there was a way that people were directing their energies, which was cool. It was fine. It's great, love and light. But I'm like, what about the shadow though? What about the times I feel like shit or I have negative thoughts about somebody or I'm triggered? Like, how do you handle that? Do I gotta love and light everything? And yes, it's all you, right? And so when nefarious things happen to you, it's like, oh shit, how did I attract that? How did I not have the boundaries Where have I been possibly systemically allowing myself these energies or entities to come into my field because I just didn't know, right? It's like a child. You don't know until you know. And when you know better, you do better. But I was always the one questioning when everybody was kumbaya and singing and drum and doing drumming. And I was like, but what about the shadow? What about when you feel like shit? What about when, you're saying one thing and psychically I can tell obviously you don't like me and you're doing another. Like, how do we talk on these things, right? And but again, the language, I loved one of the content creators I just came across. Gosh, what's his name? I think it was the something shaman. I'll have to put his link on there. I just came across his channel. It was so funny. He was talking about, the salad words, just the love and light lingo that we were all in at the time. And I was part of that too, right? Because I wanted to fit in. I've always been wanting to fit into community and have like-minded, like-hearted beings. I always, I was community driven. I still am. I've got Jupiter in the second house in Aquarius. I'm here for the collective energies. I'm here to experience big groups, organizations. I've always been a part of some sort of group dynamic since 1996, no, 94, when I've had my first hospitality job, right? So we had our own little cliques or groups or communities within service. It's like being in the trenches together, right? Like anybody's worked in hospitality, it's a whole different uh, landscape and sort of mental construct. You have to be able to deal with a lot of people's shit, right? A lot of people who are nitpicky and anyway, it's a whole dynamic. So if you've been in hospitality or worked in the restaurant, gosh, I commend you. I've been in the trenches with you. I know it. And so now I'm in the trenches of the community, of the spiritual community, right? Because this is where I'm moving to now, right? Getting really clear on my purpose, speaking astrology, speaking about things that are spiritual, that are spiritual, things that come back to us, right? Think of like the spiral, the Fibonacci spiral. We're all spirituals. We're all spirituals. And we all have a spiritual nature, but it's how do we talk about it? How do we discuss it? How do we work with these lower octave frequencies? And we're in Gemini season right now. We just had this whole sort of demolish of Aubrey Marcus, which again, hey, Aubrey, way to go, way to fall off that pedestal and land on your ass loud for us to see so we can talk about it. And you're helping us, bring up this sedimentary energy that maybe we pushed down because we didn't want to be pushed away or exiled from these communities. And I did that. And I actually, from my own experience, I was sort of ostracized in a way. And I'm not a victim because I did it to myself. Yes. But I was also willing to go against the grain. And I think this is my Aquarius third house, even within the spiritual community, and calling bullshit on things that I had seen going on, the gaslighting, and with dear friends and family, with dear spiritual soul sister tribes that I love tremendously, but I still was having these entanglements with because I could see, I'm like, you're not telling me the truth. I could feel it, right? And I could feel the density of what's being shared here. And it's not 100% accurate. It's not coming truly from spirit, if you will, because we're not talking about the shadow. We're just talking about the love and light. And so I kind of got angry. I actually pulled myself off. And during this time, guys, I'm going to be completely transparent. Since 2018, I really haven't been playing with money. I've been coasting and staying in friends and families' houses, and I think I probably have been living on no more than a couple of $100 in my bank account at any given time since 2018. And before my dad transitioned, he gave me a little bit of money. And then thank goodness, I was so grateful. And then when these hurricanes hit, and my son, who was living in North Carolina, Chimney Rock at the time, he became homeless because the whole town got wiped out, right? And so he was living in his car. And so the little bit of money that my dad gave me to, continue with my business, I gave some of that to my son, right? So I'm so grateful we had that, right? But money to me, it's not been the focus. The focus has been on my inner healing. So much so, I was so determined that I'm like, I had made a pact with myself that if I'm going to get this life, I'm going to get it real, I'm going to get it true, or I don't want it. And so I had to almost be willing to be homeless, right? To say, well, F it, I'm going to go live in a forest and drink spring water. And I'm getting off this matrix grid. I'm getting off this money system because I'm sick of chasing money. I'm sick of prostituting my energy, because in hospitality, especially if you're a bartender, there is that prostitute energy, right? You're getting tipped on, yeah, how you serve drinks. You can get a Bud Light anywhere, but you're also, you're selling your persona, right? You're having to, from my experience, especially working at a beach bar, right? No pressure, everybody's in bikinis looking good, right? And so your tips are based on how good you look, on how good your personality is, on how well you serve, right? So I can remember like busting my ass sometimes and like being very weeded, four deep in the restaurant, and I'm like, okay, I got sweat coming all, and I remember thinking like, I got to sit here and pour a drink and have a smile on my face and play around and look good while I'm doing it. Meanwhile, it's I just feel like shit. I'm hot, I'm sticky, I'm sweaty, and I got to look good so I can make this money because I got to provide for my family, for my son, for myself. And again, I'm not saying it's all bad because I had a really good time. There were some times that were really fun and good, but there were some times it was really hard. And again, I'm bringing in this energy because it just came up. I had some friends visiting from Florida, and we were recollecting as the moon had shifted into Cancer, and it was trining this energy. And so we were talking about the past, and about, also have Aries right now, and Venus. So talking about value and money and what we used to do, because Cancer likes to talk about past things. Cancer likes to live in the past. It's the nature of Cancer, right? The home memory, because it's ruled by the moon, and the moon controls the tides of water, and water holds memory. So again, we were remembering on different ways that we operated in our old lives, right? The old versions of ourselves, who we were. And so all this was being brought up, things I hadn't thought about in years. And this is part of the dialogue that we were speaking about, and how I was really feeling, and how I was actually angry at money, that I always felt like I had to go chase it and prostitute myself. There was a part of my energy that, if I wasn't the prettiest, if I wasn't, there first or the most liked, whatever the story I was going through at the time, because it was tied into self-worth and value, and literally what my bank account looked like based on, what I looked like, right? So this is a form of prostitute energy. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong or good or bad. It's just, it's an archetype, right? The archetype of the prostitute, the archetype of the martyr, the archetype of the savior. These are all archetypical energies, which astrology talks about. We talk about the 12 different archetypes of astrology, which is the 12 houses. So if you look at Western astrology or Eastern, anything that follows a system of archetypical energies, these are part of the energies that we all are part of, right? It's the human collective. We all have our different archetypical energies that manifest. And so for me, when I look at the prostitute energy, I look at Venus. I've got Venus in Sagittarius first house, right? So what I do, the action I take, how I'm seen is how I generate money, how I generate current. And so going through this whole process, I had to really face my anger with money, of having to chase money all the time. I was tired, always having two or three jobs since I was in my 20s. And now I'm in my late 40s, and I was just done. And so I had to get to a point within myself where I was like, F it. I'm getting off this matrix. I'm getting off this hamster wheel. And if that requires me being homeless and not having money, that's what I'm going to do. And I had to get to that resolve. And I'm still unfolding with this again. And I'm so grateful. My abundance comes in my friendship groups and my communities who have taken me in and who love me being around. And like I said, I do exchanges, right? I'll clean houses, I'll pet sit, I'll do different things, right? This has been the dance while I'm still doing my astrology, which is like, I'm going to be that. And that's kind of the resolve I had to do too, is like, I have to learn how to generate currency in another way. And so for years, 25 years, it was generating currency in this way, being of service in this way, through food, through drink, through again, being in hospitality. But now, as I'm moving more into my spiritual career, which is just a human career, astrology, it's a tool to help you discover yourself. It's like a personal development tool. And so, and it's helped me quite a bit, and I love it. And so I want to share it, right? So I'm having to learn how to receive from astrology in the same manner that I was able to learn to receive from hospitality. And it's been a dance because again, it's tied into, I had to deal with, people that are spiritual. If you charge for things, then that means you're really not spiritual. The demonization is that if you make money, then you're not really spiritual. This whole sacrifice, I'm just going to serve the collective and I'm going to go broke doing it. But hey, I'm holier than now because I'm, speaking on these spiritual matters. But yet you can't, put gas in your car. Like, so there was so much conflict and in this weird paradoxical energy and this judgment around having a spiritually based business and being spiritual and wanting to receive from helping people just based on what you've learned. But because you're spiritual, you shouldn't receive money. You need to do this shit for free, right? This is all taught by religion. Yet they still accepted, tax-free donations, but they never had to pay taxes on. But don't even get me started down that rabbit hole. And I'm still dealing with the anger from religious institutions because there was a lot of layers there. And I feel like this is not only the first lifetime I've done it. I feel like this is many lives um, of having to heal. And I'm almost calling it too from the witch wound, right? Because I've also had deeply, deeply psychic gifts from a very young age. And I've seen things and felt things from people, but I was scared to share it. And I have, practices that I do naturally, organically, that I just do it. I don't even know why I do some of the things I do. I feel like it's very an old remembrance from an old time and space where I used to do these things and where we were demonized, right? The people the healers, the ones that worked with medicines, plant medicines, herbs. There was a whole, again, religion going back to I'm thinking to the Spaniard, right? Where they would go and kill, millions of people to bring their God in, including people who practice paganism, which they call witchcraft and demonized it, meaning they were just working with the earth, right? But they wanted to bring in their whole medical system and healthcare system outside of natural plants. And so there was this consistent genocide of anybody that did things differently, right? And so we're starting to see that too in the collective shadow of all of us, of what we may be feeling, what we may have experienced. And these are not easy topics, guys. These are not easy things to look at. And even now, I was listening to a podcast from Candace Owens because I like to get information from different. And Ian Carroll was on there. He's been helping her do her podcast since she's had her child, Jordan, I believe. Anyway, she just recently came into my field and mostly because I like following Ian Carroll. He was an original TikTok creator that started on TikTok and he was just, asking questions about, he was actually going into the Targets and into all these corporations to see our healthcare and like our shampoo and our foods, that they're all run by these, same corporation, and that the corporation that actually makes you sick will give you the tools and the medicines to make you feel better, but they're also giving you things that are sick. So he was just kind of doing a big expose. It was canceled, this clothing company. So I really want to thank you, Ian Carroll. But now he's exposing the dark side of our justice system. And if you want to go and check out his podcast, he's right now did an expose right now on arbitration and secret arbitration and how that's been permeating our collective field and what corporations have been allowed to do legally to basically bully humans that don't. It's about injury, and if they ever got injured, then it's in secret, and then humans really can't do anything about it. So you want to check out that podcast. It's really activating. And again, this is the collective talk right now of things that have been hidden in these huge systems outside of ourselves, our justice system, religion, finance, governing bodies, how all we're looking at the shadow dark side. This is when Pluto was in Capricorn, and now we're starting to see the injustices coming to light with Pluto and Aquarius. Groups are talking about it now. And especially with this trine energy, we're starting to see the shadow of ourselves, the indoctrinations that kept us in a program. Best way to describe it, I'm trying to neutralize the language as best as I can, while also healing from it, right? Dealing with my own anger and my own frustration and the imbalance, the injustice that I'm starting to see very clearly and starting to give voice to. And so I really want to honor those of you who are doing the work, who are looking at the shadow of yourself, where you didn't hold boundaries, where you were in trust, and you trusted the people outside of you, right? You trusted these leaders, men and women of God, men and women of our governments, get men and women of the justice system, legal system, that we thought had our backs. And some do. I'm not demonizing everybody. I'm not throwing everybody out, but I am saying that there is a system that has been keeping humanity, let's just say, in a bubble, right? In a box, in a program, right? The black box technology, right? The square energy, which has been keeping us in a loop of reality. And thank goodness for the astrology, these currents of energy that have been coming onto the planet, that is creating the collapse of these old systems, that's allowing us to see the shadow and to work with the energy and the medicine of forgiveness. And if you don't know what to forgive, then how are you going to work with that medicine? And it's first of all forgiving yourself, right? Forgiving yourself for allowing these things to come in, and maybe going against your intuition, because I feel like a lot of us know, like we know there's something off, but because we don't want to be shunned from our communities, or we don't want to be seen as the black sheep, or and maybe our money's involved, right? If like you see imbalances in hospitality and you just saw the dark side of it, but yet that was also a source of your income, so you couldn't really speak on it. The dark side of managers holding positions of power, and using their power for sexual advances. More often than not, like I said, I've worked in many different hospitality restaurants, and I've seen the imbalances where managers or owners, will have these sexual relationships with their with their employees, and then we can't talk about it, right? So there's just an underbelly to everything. Are you willing to look at it? Are you willing to sit with it? Are you willing to acknowledge how it's possibly injured you and your experience and what you've been projecting? And are you willing to forgive, first of all, yourself and then the other, and then alchemize it through talking about it, right? Setting the vibration that you're not alone, that if you've had these experiences, there might be others that have had these experiences. Because again, we're coming into the age of Aquarius, which is all is self, all is one. If it's happened to me, it's probably happened to somebody else, probably happened to, and it's probably still maybe continuing to happen to many people. And if we're done, if you want change, then you got to become that change, right? And so I'm still healing with the money codes and this whole, even looking at the money as a necromancy, right? Why do they have dead presidents on there with all this symbology? And then I get into the occult stuff. I'm like, oh, this has been wired with certain frequencies. So that's why I had to pull off of money. And it was almost played a game with myself. I'm like, can I continue living in this world without money, or with the minimal resources, like with minimal things floating in my bank account, because I really want to access the current within me, the unconditional currency within me. And I'm learning to be an entrepreneur, right? So learning not to prostitute myself, but to really be of service, and to know that there's an equal exchange happening where I feel valuable, the other feel valuable. I call it the win-win. I'll only do things now in my life that create a win-win scenario for both parties involved, right? And I'm not saying this road is for everybody, guys, because this has been one of the hardest roads and journeys I've ever taken. And if you guys, and again, you have to face poverty. You have to face being willing to let everything go, including safety and security, right? And so to have what you really want, you've got to be able to let these things go. So it's been a dance, and I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard. It's scary at times. You're like, how am I gonna pay for this? How am I gonna do this? And then there's this dance too, and you don't want to feel like you're just mooching off of somebody. It's why I always felt like I need to exchange, right? Like, just put me to work, I'll do whatever needs. Again, coming out of that, again, poverty, like the Cinderella codes too. It's another archetype that I'm healing from. And so there's just all these archetypical energies that have been lingering in my psyche, probably in my ancestry and my genetic codes for many, many, many lifetimes, that I'm ready to resolve and clear up, because I do come from a family of poverty and the poverty consciousness. And so willing to release that embedding program, because when you go out in nature, guys, nature is so abundant. And so I've been practicing. I have a little altar I have set up behind me, and every day I wake up and I'm like, just for today, I'm going to trust that everything is happening for me. Just for today, I'm going to trust that I am being guided and protected and nourished. And it's not always about money. But gosh, with this gratitude that I've been cultivating, curating within myself, I realized that, oh my gosh, I am wealthy because you know what I have? I have my health. I've been super healthy and and growing into more and more health practices, you realize as you start expanding into these realms of consciousness, you really don't need a lot, right? You just need specific things in your body and around you. You need a roof over your shoulder, clean air, clean water, protection from the elements. You don't even really need a lot of food that we thought we needed, right? So fasting has been a great medicine for me, realizing, oh, my body doesn't need as much. This whole 3 to 5 meals a day, again, the part of the program that I'm coming out of, but until you decide to go into it and release all of it, you don't know, right? So we still think in the mind. I thought I needed a certain number of money, a certain amount of money in my bank account to feel secure, right? But that was all the illusion. Because no matter how much money I had in my bank account, I realized and how much I was working for it, in my younger years when I was bartending in hospitality all these years, I never felt that security. Even when I had lots of money in my bank account, I never felt that security. So it's been the dance of like, how can I feel secure no matter outside of the number that's in my bank account? How can I be present and entrust that this life is happening for me because I'm starting to witness magic and allow myself to receive abundance that's not just money. Money is just one tool, it's just one form of current, you know, and in that regard, in that line of thinking, there are so many things around me that I have to be grateful for because abundance is all around me. I'm just learning to let it in. I'm learning to accept and receive the abundance that's here by changing how I'm seeing it, how I'm changing my codes about how I perceive money, releasing the anger, the inherited anger, right? Because I've literally heard mom and dad both say, people with a lot of money are evil and they do evil shit with the money. And that is true in some ways. But then there's also a lot of people that are doing good with their abundance and giving back and creating change. And so again, healing these all my own money codes, the codes from my ancestors that were ready to release these thought forms, these falsities. We're starting to rewire, regrid how we see money, how we see abundance, how we see health and wealth and community. And so we're really getting to the space of talking about it and being vulnerable and also getting courage not to give a crap what happens. Like once you put your truth out there, it's like I feel like the fool stepping off of the cliff, right? And then you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to put it out there. We'll see who's left after this transmission. I may be blocked again. Uh, but that, you got to be okay with that too, right? Because those are old versions of you of all self that need to go away to make room for your true tribe. As you're stepping into your true voice and your true authentic vibration, you want the people that vibe with you on that level to come in. And so again, if you're a part of this channel, you're a part of this conversation, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being tribe. I'm asking for you guys that are willing to step into the unknown within yourself, to be transparent and honest about what's really going on with you. There's medicine with that. And there's medicine not just for you, but for those that are watching you, that if you decide to live out loud with what's really going on, not just the love and light, right? And not just the shadow and dark, because that's again, because you're all of it. And so can you embrace and love all of you? That's the question. How can we do that? Well, in Gemini season, it's about talking about it. It's about sharing our truth, no matter what the consequences, and finding your tribe by sharing your truth. Because those are the communities that are being formed right now. That's the revolution. It's the revolution of the mind. It's the architecture of the mind. If you can architect these ideas and thought form patterns within you, then as projectors, we can project those. And that's how we can see these new communities are going to be built. New ways to live together, new ways to sustain our food, to clear up our waters, to clear up our air. There's going to be less tolerance for the bullshit. And as we're being activated to remember who we really are, and it's outside of the programming, outside of anything you thought you were taught, be in the now, then you'll be in the know, and then we can have a better experience together collectively if you're willing to do that work and to really acknowledge where you're at. And it's not all about love and light. It's about facing the shadow and then coming from that space of authenticity. So I feel complete in this transmission. We didn't look at the astrology. I think that's going to be for another day because I've got chores I have to do and ways to serve humanity right now that came unexpectedly, right? So just staying in flow, again, releasing where resources come, just staying in the now and just trusting that everything will be taken care of, that I have everything I need at any given time, which I do. And I'm so grateful, even without having money, which is really ironic. And so again, I'm playing with this this realm, these ideas. So, and again, tune in tomorrow live for another conversation. Again, continuing on this 30-day cosmic conversation exploration in Gemini season as we are speaking on things, perhaps in a whole new way, seeing things in a new way, that we're starting to be willing to take the courage, Aries, to express ourselves, Saturn, build structure. This is long-term planning, but you got to really attract your true tribe. So it's time to speak your truth so you can attract the beings and the people and the situations that are really meant for you, not based on your old constructs, your old indoctrination, or old beliefs. That's all falling away. So it's time to get the real and to emit that real frequency. So thank you for being here. Thank you for playing. Thank you for having this cosmic, sometimes deep and not always easy conversation to have, but it's necessary. It's the medicine we all need right now. The medicine of truth and authenticity and being willing to look at your shadow and talk about it, because it'll help so many people, which is all you. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow on this cosmic conversation journey. Thank you for